Hey, what's up, y'all? I am Simon Garcia, and welcome to Crash and Convos. This podcast is all about exploring the ups and downs of life, wellness, resilience, and everything in between through the arts of conversation. We'll also dive into deep discussions on existential questions, philosophical thoughts, and how we are part of something bigger. By sharing my experiences along with those of my guests, I hope to bring you inspiration and a sense of direction through connection, which may help the listener begin to understand and unravel some situations they may be facing. To support this podcast, please subscribe, like, or share with someone you feel it may help. Thank you for your time and your presence. Now, I welcome my next guest.
I'll just start recording. I don't want to fuck up like last time and not record it. So yeah, I was listening to that audio from the
How to
author.
think like a Roman emperor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he started, I think, from like chapter 5 or 8. I forget which chapter, but it was all about death.
Yeah.
And,
The beginning of the book, the first couple chapters of the book is he's narrating from the point of Marcus Aurelius as Marcus Aurelius is dying, and just thinking about, what he's experiencing as he's dying.
yeah. And it's fascinating to think about and like to kind of link up to my own experiences and contemplating death
Mm-hmm.
on various levels.
Yeah.
I mean, there's one, right, to look at it from the standpoint of a Stoic, right, or Marcus Aurelius, where you're actually
Yeah.
like accepting death, right, or accepting the idea that we're all going to die.
Right.
And that's on one level, right? And it's one thing, but also to look at it from a standpoint of my own experience of not appreciating life and
Right.
what it's like to get into that space and to contemplate it, what it would be like to not be here.
Right.
And like, I don't want to say fantasize about it. That's probably not the right word, but to just the idea of letting go, right?
Right.
And it's probably not an ideal way to die. I mean, even though at times it seemed like it, but it's different to look at it from Marcus Aurelius' standpoint and to see it, accept it, but press forward, right? And just be like, all right, that's going to happen. I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to meditate on it and then I'm going to move forward and capitalize on whatever comes my way and
Yeah.
become like whatever my purpose is. Like, however the card's going to be dealt for me today, this is how I'm going to move forward.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. That's I mean, the Stoics they say it's healthy to think about your mortality. Uh, they say, I think one of the ways it's written is like every other thought. Um, I don't think there's anything morbid about it. I mean, um, fantasizing, the word you use, fantasizing, which I know you uh, already wanted to choose a different word, but um, it's inevitable. I mean, like, I don't know about you, but here in my small town that I live in, I drive past two cemeteries every day, sometimes two or three times a day. I drive past those cemeteries. They're full from one end to the other with grave markers, but there's never any people there, so it's just a reminder, that everybody over all the decades represented in that cemetery was walking amongst us at one time, and now they're just bones under the ground or stuffed into the wall. you know so you're always, it's always around you, but as sentient beings that we are, we're always caught in our own little world, like observing my animals. When I had horses and dogs, they don't think about that, and when they get sick and they start to die, they don't there's no, as it says in the Bible, gnashing of teeth. They just know it's time to go, and they go with
Yeah.
honor. And I mean, and in the fire service, I've my whole career, 36 years, I can't even tell you how many people I've seen die. There's some that I'll never forget, but there's some that I've forgotten because it was like not a big deal. And I know that's hard because like for us that's a benchmark and that's like something sacred. And you say somebody died and you're just full of emotion and emotional hysteria sometimes. And some people hold on to that. They can't get over it when they lose somebody. And but like you watch an animal pass and the dog knows it's dying, the horse knows it's dying, and it's not a big deal. It's just like part of living, dying. And like I said, we're reminded of it. So the Stoics think it's good to think on it, uh, at least regularly, and I do, especially now I'm going on 64. I mean, you got more life behind you than ahead of you for sure. And in mountain biking, even it's like, how much longer can I do this? Well, I still feel pretty good. I climb slower. I don't take as big a risk, but I'm still having fun. And I um, when am I going to like break down and buy an e-bike? Well, I'm still determined not to do that for another few years. Um, but so I'm always thinking about it. And then, I used to be a practicing Christian and I would always think to myself, well, if I really believe this, then what do I care? Because there's something better, and then the Stoics, like, there's nothing else. You're just in the dirt. That's it. And so if your life ends and there's nothing else, like what does it matter? What do you care? I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because um and like I said, I can't even tell you how many people I've seen die in the back of an ambulance, at the scene of an accident, at the scene of somebody's serious illness. And I think the most recent one for me was my father-in-law died 3 years ago. And, like if you think about it as like a contract, you get to live, you get a TV and it's got a 10-year warranty. You get a car, it's got 100,000 mile warranty. On human life, it's somewhere between 80 and 100 years. And so he died at home with his entire family around him in his bedroom. And it literally was like he just got less and less active, and then he became less and less conscious until it was just like he was sleeping. And then his everything finally gave up, and everybody was there. And I thought, man, if I could sign that contract right now, I would fucking sign that contract right now. I mean, I there was it was so natural, and a lot of the deaths I've attended have been really natural. So I think the reason why that book opens with that how to think like a Roman emperor, I think reason why it opens with death is because that's kind of the finality, and then where it takes off. And of course, Marcus Aurelius never intended for his memoirs or his diaries to be published and read by people. Those were just his private thoughts to himself. And the actual title, the title in Greek means to himself. And so I think that's kind of the reason why it starts with that, because then it takes off in his memoirs or his diaries, which are the meditations. And so, yeah, it's good. And I think thinking of your mortality is a good, well-rounded, healthy thing, and I don't think it's anything to be afraid of. And and I don't think it's dark, and I don't think it's morbid.
Yeah. Yeah. So for those of you guys listening, this is Mike Sheppard. You can go to episode 55. You can hear his story, but I brought him back on to talk. He's been tracking and following Stoicism for a while, and it's something I pull from every so often, especially to try to get a better understanding of myself, life, and our existence. On top of that, it's also a good way to um, stay even keel and not allow other people to control you by their actions. And it's interesting because the neighborhood I got brought up in was based on, I'm pretty sure you've served in areas like that where a lot of it was based off respect. And if you were disrespected, then you had to return, like you had to act in kind, like right away. And that led to bad habits. It led me to a lot of sketchy situations throughout my life,
Yep.
which I'm surprised I'm still here, right?
Yep.
But with that, it's like as I get older and I start to understand these things, it's like, man, like I'm allowing other people to control me based off of their lack of emotional stability.
Right.
And I fall into that trap, as most of
Yep.
us do. Road rage is a perfect example. So going back to Stoicism, that's a good way, I guess, a good practice to follow if you read them, to understand it. And it's like we said last time, we had a podcast before, and something happened with the recording, and it's too bad because it was a great conversation. I enjoyed
Yeah, it
having this
was.
conversations with Mike. But one of this is yeah, was is to have control of self, pretty much.
Mhm.
And so yeah, like we kind of just got into it because he sent me an audiobook, and it went straight into death. And I like, again, like I used to think about this often, especially growing up. Um, like death was all around me too.
Yep.
Seeing people OD, seeing people get shot, seeing people.
Yep.
I mean, you saw a lot more of it, but it was definitely prevalent in my neighborhood. And I didn't know any better, right? But it made me at a young age consider death a lot sooner than most people, I feel, have to contemplate it.
Sure. And then I think, because I mean, I grew up in neighborhoods in Long Beach and Whittier, California, and they weren't great neighborhoods that I grew up in, and a lot of my friends were cholos, and stuff was always happening to them or somebody, their brothers or uncles or whatever. Um, and I think the reason why I went in the military is because I knew I had to get out of that neighborhood and away from my friends. And and so I didn't have, my parents had nothing to offer me. And so I went to a recruiter and went in the military. But yeah, and when you're, like you said, that whole respect thing, I mean, it's not really respect because we only respect what we respect. We don't respect everything like we want to be respected. It's a crazy thing. It's just a really immature thing. And it's kind of tribal too. I remember, you just had to be careful. You couldn't step on somebody's shoes by accident, or that could lead to all kinds of consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah, and working as a paramedic in Los Angeles County for half my career, and then moving up here to Oregon and working as a paramedic in Eugene and Springfield, much, much smaller areas. But, in LA County, I mean, shootings and stabbings were, if not in every shift thing, for sure in every week thing. And most of them were because of respect or lack of respect, or, somebody perceived that they were, you know, not respected, it's like such an overused term. It's almost like the term patriot. Everybody who puts on a, uh, grunt T-shirt is a patriot. And in LA, everybody who's dressed down like is to be respected. But what is respect? And anyhow, um, so basically, Stoicism is how to live what they call the good life. And I think the word is like eudaimonia, eudaimonia. Anyhow, the good life, and the good life is to um, live within your own reason choices, and to make your decisions using the four cardinal virtues, which is courage, wisdom, discipline, and temperance, or instead of saying the word temperance, a more modern is moderation. So, justice. Yeah. So courage, justice, wisdom, and temperance. And so that's what Stoicism is about, and to not be overcome with your emotions. It's the word stoic and stoicism are different. Stoic is to show an outward, calmness, or that you're unaffected. That some people think stoicism is not having emotions, but that's completely incorrect. It's just about not letting yourself be ruled by your emotions and by other people's actions. And those actions could include, somebody disrespecting you. It's like you just said a minute ago, what do you care about what other people think? And it's funny. I was thinking when you were talking about the neighborhood thing, because I'm totally aware what that is. Um, um, I lost my train of thought there. When you're talking about the neighborhood thing, and being respected, look at where we are now. Like we are, and I say myself, addicted to social media. I'm always on Instagram or Facebook. And I mean, I use it for Facebook. I have a business account and I use it every day, and it really helps my business. And it's the cheapest way to advertise. I stay in contact with friends in Texas, California, Ohio, and around Oregon. But if I was honest, I have to say I'm addicted to it. And I've felt myself getting my feelings hurt by some stranger who made some rude comment. I think, why do I care? What is it? Who cares? But here we are in this social media tribes, and uh, everybody's floundering around, wanting to get respect or validity, or and I have to think, what what am I doing? Why am I caught up in this? Um, so uh, so anyhow, yeah, on a daily level though, Stoicism is about uh, your own reasoned choices, and making those choices based on the four cardinal virtues of courage, wisdom, justice, and temperance or moderation. Um, and if it's been around. It started 500 years before uh, Jesus Christ. It started around 300 BCE, before Common Era, and and if you look at it, it pulls from wisdom from other religions, or other religions pull from Stoicism. It's, I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg, but uh, it's definitely helped me. It's helped me with discipline. It's helped me to uh, do the right thing, say the right thing, or not say the right thing. Like one of Marcus Aurelius's uh, quotes is about, you don't have to act. You don't have to act. You don't have to react to something. You can wait before you respond to something. Um, it's full of a lot of good things that are easily achievable. If you practice every day. Um, yeah. Anyhow.
Yeah. And that's the hard part, right? I mean, you kind of touched on social media, and like they know what they're doing. They know how to elicit and keep our attention in the way of like kind of perpetuating like the negativity and the algorithm and all these things. And
Mhm.
I've been subject to it too in the past, and it's also like understanding what they choose to promote and how they promote it. And yeah, so and we're human beings, and at the very basis of it all, we want to be accepted, right, by the community, by the
Sure.
tribe, if you will.
Sure.
And it's easy to get wrapped around the axle as individuals, And like one thing I've noticed is that the more stressed we become, the more likely we are to go into a default setting and react or
Right.
just kind of rely on old ways.
Right.
But like practicing it right every day and trying to reestablish those neural pathways to form new like habits or new ways of thinking is challenging, right? Because
Yeah.
you want to react, especially if like there's a loved one involved, right?
Right.
And or like you're trying to come to the defense or something happens. And
Right.
I mean I know it's case by case, but how has these practices kind of like shaped or redefined how you exist in the world, and like how do you continually practice them?
Well, for me, it starts in the morning. As far as practice. So ever since I retired from the fire service, I spent a lifetime of sleep deprivation, like average 4 hours a night. It was average. And so now I'm in bed by 10. I'm up by 6 or earlier. And I stick to my routine, which you don't need stoicism or anything else to stick to your routine, but it helps me. So I make my coffee, um, feed the dogs. I sit down, and I have right here next to me. I have uh, Marcus Aurelius Meditations. This is one of many translations. It's one I really like. Um, I'll read. I'll read that for a half hour or so, and then I have um, a book I really like. It's called The Daily Stoic, and it's a daily journal, and it doesn't take a huge commitment. It's 1 page a day.
Mhm.
So and then I get through it, and then I start all over again. But it's 1 page a day, and so I write down my thoughts based on my reading and meditations. I used to do the same thing when I studied the Bible, and so that sets my day for me. Um, if I can't do that, uh, it's no big deal. I'll find a lesser or shorter way to do part of that. And then I go through my day, and then I will take the dogs out for a 4 mile walk, work out. I try not to. Used to be pretty common for me to drink, you know, I don't know, several beers a day, um, two, three, four, whatever. Um, I I try to stay away from, I haven't drank alcohol at home in a couple years now, and I try to stay away from uh, food cravings. I used to, as part of studying um, the cardinal virtues, uh, uh, temperance or moderation. It could be for everything: food, thoughts, alcohol. And so I try to think on, why do I crave these things? And then so typically I'll drink a vegan protein shake, and I'm not a vegan. I'll drink a vegan protein shake in the morning. I won't have anything until later in the afternoon, and then I might have um, these vegan protein meal that you mix hot water with.
Mhm.
Um, and then I'll eat a normal dinner, which usually consists of a big leafy salad and a source of protein. And so that's also part of my discipline with this is understanding my cravings, not having to have comfort food or craft beer, because the city of Eugene is like every craft brewery you can think of is around us. Um, I you know I try not to like focus on that, look forward to that. I just go through my day. And so, but I'm spending more time doing things like reading. I'm really into art and painting. I have a small business, work on my business every day, my workouts, and mountain biking. and then I put aside things that are for immediate gratification, um, and study myself and why do those things gratify me and not other things.
Right. Oh,
Yeah. So that okay, and then going to other things, not being overcome by my emotions, and my daily time in traffic. I mean, I was somebody who was could be prone to road rage or being angry, or letting things get to me. And I'm really aware now that I can let something go. And why do I care? That's not my problem. That's not my business. Let that go. You know, I try to stay out of other people's business, especially my family. Uh, it's like, hey, nobody asked you for help, um, or hey, that's their life. Just you got to respect, give them the dignity to make their own choices, whether you think they're right or not. Um, I'm trying to be mindful of these things, and some of that stuff comes into play too. Mindfulness, comes into play with Stoicism. Um, uh, I I I I really want a new truck really bad, and I try to overcome that because my truck is fine. It's paid for. It's been paid for forever. You know, if I took on debt, it would put more pressure on my life. So I'm trying to have less pressure, less stress, which gives me more freedom to go mountain biking if I want, or for my wife and I to load up our truck and camper and go camping or go try to a new mountain bike spot, because I don't have all these other obligations. So, I try to refrain from that. And it's not about denial. It's about trying to achieve that good life with making decisions on your own reasoned choices. Um, and I think it just brings me closer to where I'm supposed to be, how I'm supposed to feel. Um, and it works pretty well, for me. And it's not for everybody, but Stoicism's getting really really popular, and I can see the reason why. I've been studying it now for I think I started in 2018.
mhm.
And I've stuck with it. I don't ever get tired of it. I don't ever get tired of reading or listening. There's so many good, healthy Stoic podcasts out there. My favorite Stoic author is Ryan Holiday, and he has a free daily email called the Daily Stoic, and he sends out just a message. It's easy to read every day. He always also has a video podcast. He always interviews uh, some pretty famous people. He has Matthew McConaughey on a lot. I think Ryan Holiday lives in Bastrop, Texas, and Matthew McConaughey, I think, is in Austin.
Yeah.
And but he's always got famous people on his podcast, and they're always healthy. Um, yeah, to me, it works really well. So
Yeah. I mean, you said like you mentioned that it's getting more popular now, and it makes sense because of the extreme amount of information and like seemingly like everything in your face on so many levels, whether
yeah,
it's like politics or whether it's the news or somebody
yeah,
else doing something different. And I think as humans, we try to find that natural balance, at least the people that are self-aware of that, because too much of anything is a bad thing. And going back to the balance of all things in nature, that's
yeah,
how I see things. That the nature has a natural balance. I mean, some
yep,
people see it as cruel,
yep,
but it just is what it is, you know.
yeah,
And I think we personalize it because we're human, so we're egoic, and we make it about us,
yep,
me included. And it's like trying to dial that back, right?
yep,
Because that can often get in the way. And I try to do that with workouts. I try to do that with mountain biking. I really try
yeah,
to dial back my ego.
yeah,
And going back to like the start of Stoicism and what have you, I've been reading a book by Brian Maruscu. I don't think I have it in here. It's called The Immortality Key, and it talks
No,
about. Yeah, you know about it? So he did a
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, it's a fascinating book because he's tied psychedelics into um uh he's studied them all the way back to the Eleusinian mysteries
Hmm.
and how people used to do the pilgrimage, and like you couldn't speak about it because you long story short, he's with modern technology he's used archaeobotany and
Hmm.
archaeochemistry to study, like to take swabs of the ancient vases from museums and archaeological sites or what have you, and they found um, like various compounds of psychedelics to include like ergot and all these things, and it's like tying it to like the Lucian mysteries and religion and what have you, and how they used to use psychedelics to understand like our world and our journey and how we exist in this greater thing. But I think of like Stoicism, like, and with regard to that, and if Marcus Aurelius or any of them like participated in, I mean, I don't know if you know that or not, but either way, it's like one of the questions I think of because it was so prevalent at the time. I want to say it was like around for like 2000 years or something. Like the Lucian like practices and like and it was part of like beer at the time, and like how it just naturally formed in beer because of like the wheat and the fields and stuff like that, and
Hmm.
lack of refrigeration, all these things, right? But I think it's all relative to for somebody to have such a profound understanding, and it's like stood the test of time, so to speak, of like really trying to find that balance in our existence in the world, right? And just really looking things as they are,
Hmm.
because once you kind of get rid of ego, then you're able to kind of see the what's important and what isn't. Um,
Right. Right.
so
Yeah. No, I've never heard of that book. I'm aware of the psychedelic movement. I had a guy uh, who's a military combat veteran who was pretty jacked up. They actually was a Discovery Channel documentary about him or his uh, company. Um, Anyhow, he reached out to me when I retired and told me if I needed help with PTSD. He had something with guided uh, psychedelics or something. I mean, it's not something I don't feel I need or whatever. So I just politely turned him down. But I'm aware of it. But as far as like the Stoics, I haven't read, and of course, I'm not a scholar or anything like that. But I've read a lot of books. I actually have one, two, three. I have five books sitting next to me, and I'm at various stages with all five of them. A couple of them are daily readers, but um, I haven't read anything about the Stoics. Were all pretty into moderation. I think Seneca was one who probably partook the most is at like social events and parties and things like that. But Marcus Aurelius famously, didn't like to drink, or he was all about service and the common good and serving the common good. And he was the last of what they called the five good emperors. And after him was his son Commodus, who you remember in the movie Gladiator, which is
hmm.
loosely based on history, very loosely. But Commodus was, in real life, Commodus was a horrible emperor and ended up getting assassinated, but was also really into huge parties, gladiator games, orgies, all that stuff. But Marcus Aurelius was pretty boring by Roman standards, and he was the first one who also he didn't take away the gladiator games, but he took away the swords and had they used wooden swords. And then, of course, they went back to real swords after his son Commodus took over. But anyhow, as far as I know, he didn't didn't practice any kind of self-medication or anything like that. Um, um, yeah, I definitely don't know enough about it to speak to it, but um, I mean, like you were talking about the beer and finding trace elements of things on pottery or shards of pottery, and um, it's all interconnected. I mean, we're one of the things that I learned from Stoicism is the Stoics believed in what they call the logos, and you
Mhm.
also see the logos mentioned in the Bible. Of course, I think it's used in two different ways, but the Stoics believed in the interconnectedness of everything, nature and humans, and they referred to it as logos, the universe. You know, and as you said, and this guy's studying these uh, relics and getting swabs of trace elements and things off these relics and finding out, that they come into play even today. I mean, it's all interconnected. And if you, over the summer, I read Grant and I read Lincoln, which are huge books. Grant's over 1,100 pages. And, about the Civil War and Reconstruction period and the Gilded Age. And I got to tell you, man, not much has changed from this moment right now and all the ugliness we're seeing right now. Um, Not much has changed at all. People were still the same. It's just the world was um, not as small as it is now because we weren't able to, you know, we didn't have internet access, and everything wasn't in the moment. But I I totally believe that, but it's all connected, and that we're all interconnected. Um,
Right.
and-
And yeah, and I agree with you on that. Like, and as far as I wasn't, I was just merely just kind of thinking out loud. Like, I wonder if that had something to do with it. I mean, whether it was or wasn't, but I think I think we said the last podcast, I guess the lost podcast, we call it that.
I
We talked
like
about,
that.
yeah, I talked about, we like to think that we've come up with these new ideas and thoughts, but I think I feel like um, everything that's needed to be said has been said. We just
Yeah,
think that we come up with these new ideas and thoughts and stuff, but like
right,
meditations is one of those things that it's kind of stood the test of time and it applies now. And people are people, right? And we all have the capacity to do horrible things, and we also have the capacity to do great things and good things but it's all that balance, right? And going back to
right.
psychedelics and stuff too. I mean, you could bastardize that too. I mean,
Sure.
any external thing, whether it's working out or drinking or can be abused, and then it can become your poison.
Yeah,
And I think that's one of the things I appreciate about Stoicism. It takes in that balance in, like, for each person to decide for themselves, and how we choose to live our lives impacts our circle in more ways than we think, because I think we're all quote unquote influencers. I mean, that's kind of like a modern term, but we do become that which we ingest, right? Whether visually, physically, mentally, all various levels, food, everything. Um, and for me, it's like, how if I am going to, especially like having this podcast, right? If I'm going to say anything, I have to be well thought out. I kind of started out just saying whatever, and
yeah,
that's cool. Like, it's cool
yeah,
to joke around, but I, I mean, it's a double-edged sword. At the same time, like, I'm still being myself, but it's also like, um, how do I be myself and still, and I'm not saying I'm always going to say the perfect thing. I do joke a lot. Sometimes my jokes don't land right. I do like to kind of joke or like just be myself in that way, but it's also like not from the standpoint of being careless.
yeah,
And when I'm talking about something serious, to joke about, you know what I mean? So there's like a
yeah,
time and
yeah.
place for all that.
I totally get it. Yep.
Um, So that's why I continue to like read and have these conversations with people, especially people that have more like life experience than I do. And being in the fire department for 36 years, that gives you a damn good understanding of the capacity of human nature um and to not to only to mention like your personal struggles with relationships or individually, right?
Yeah.
And for you folks listening, chapter 55, episode 55, you know, you can hear more about that and
Mhm.
how you've come to this place.
Yeah. 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 It's it's funny to reflect on that because, you know, I I can't believe I went through some of the things I went through, and I went through it for so long, and now it just seems like that's a dream, you know, like that's like that. Did that even happen? Well, yeah, it happened. I know it happened because I wrote it down, you know, and I experienced it, you know. But um, yeah, yeah, I don't know where to go from there, but
No, I think I
it,
was just trying to highlight like I haven't known you for a very long time, but the story that you shared with me on top of like having conversations with you like sidebars on Messenger or whatever,
yeah,
like I can appreciate it from the standpoint as a third party viewer, right, of your life and your story. And it that's one of the purposes of this podcast is to have these conversations and like hear the stories of other individuals so that way whoever the listener is can potentially, if they're aware enough, and humble enough to place themselves in somebody else's life through shared experiences and learn
yeah,
from them and kind of unravel and unlock, or at least at the very basis understand whether they are causing the harm or vice versa receiving the
right,
harm,
right,
and figure their way out of that and see that
right,
there's other people that have done it
yeah.
like yourself.
Yeah, and it is interesting. My wife and I, you know, my wife was asking me this morning, "Who were you talking to again?" Huh? I said, "You remember Simon? We were climbing with him at Motor." She's like, "Oh yeah." She goes, "Isn't that crazy? I mean, like you guys probably spent like 40 minutes, you know, we spent 40 minutes together in company just climbing up a hill. And then here we are a few years later. And, you know, you're doing this podcast thing and we're still communicating and, you know, just from a 40 something minute encounter, you know,
Yeah.
and then I have another friend who I talk to a lot and I met him on Facebook. I had bought a couple of his books on Amazon and read them. I really enjoyed them. They were fiction books, and then I read one memoir book he wrote called Notes from Afghanistan. It's when he was uh, a translator in Afghanistan. He was a civilian. He was out of the Air Force, and he was working as a civilian translator in Afghanistan. And just he wasn't in combat or anything, and just
Hmm.
reading his notes about his routine, his surroundings, the people he met, the native Afghanis that he met, that he opened up on his off duty days. He was trying to figure out something positive to do, so he wanted to teach some of the Afghani contractors how to speak English.
Mm.
And so the books, I mean, and it's fascinating. Anyhow, the point of my story is that so I reviewed his books. And then so he sent me a message, "Hey, thanks for your reviews. It really means a lot, blah, 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 blah." And then his wife retired from the Navy and they were traveling from Florida for 1 year with a trailer, their truck, and their three little boys, and they were going around the United States to hit as many national parks as they could in a year. So when they were close to Oregon, I said, "Hey, if you guys go through Oregon, stop and you can refresh, do your laundry, dump your septic here." You know, and so they did, and they stayed for 2 days, and
Heck yeah.
we got along great. And he 19 months ago, him and his whole family moved to France, and
Whoa.
yeah, he's a university professor, so you know he teaches online. But yeah, they're getting citizenship in France, and living life there, and he's still writing books, and we communicate almost every day. And it's just like me meeting you for 40 minutes. It's just like these, if you make these connections. So some of them can be really healthy if both parties are coming from a healthy place,
Right.
and from a shared experience and a shared commonality, and um yeah, so there, once again, it just enforces that message that everything's connected, you
Yeah.
know. So
Yeah, it's going back to everything's connected in 40 minutes, and then on top of that, like to have the self-awareness, and I like to use the word intuition, like to uh pick up on that resonance of another person and like where they're at, and that comes
yeah,
through like self-work and
yeah,
um trust, right?
yeah,
Um and you were nearly, I mean, you were a perfect stranger at the time,
yeah.
but then that's one of the
Well,
things that
we both had pivots, so that was the connector right there.
yeah, I was gonna say, and mountain biking too. I mean, mountain
Yeah,
biking brings out the best in a lot of people. And especially being there in Oregon and but yeah, it's so intuition, and like if you want to use a more sexier term now, it's like quantum entanglement.
yeah,
They recognize, like, the changes in particles in two different points in space, um and then to take it to more of a personal level. Like this happens often with me where somebody will pop in my head, and then I call them and they're like, dude, I was just thinking about you, or like, or whatever,
yeah,
right? And
yeah. Right.
that's something. I do feel that everything is connected, and that's why community is so important. And I feel like storytelling and story sharing is important as well,
Yeah, yeah,
because we're not meant to go through this life on our own. We can, but I
yeah.
don't think
Right.
that's our 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 design, if you will.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I totally agree with that. I'm pretty good at being isolated and being alone, but I definitely need connection, and I crave connection. And it's funny because um, a lot of those things come from your beginnings. Your either your need for connection or your need for isolation. Depend. A lot of things are formative. When you're raised. And uh, some of my need for connection is because I wasn't connected to my parents. So, but some people, can they're not connected to their parents and they're not connected to anybody. But I can be alone, but I also need connection, and yeah, and I think Stoicism helps me process that, and helps me um, kind of dissect myself and look at myself, and yeah, it just keeps me on track. And my daily goal um, is to contribute um, to the common good, whether it be in the common good between my wife and I, between my family, between my mountain bike community, however I can take that, and I recently just accepted the position of trail work coordinator for our mountain bike group, which is a
nice.
pretty good sized group. And when I applied for it, and when I went to the interview with the executive board, I tried to unsell it. I said, I'm not qualified to do this.
Hmm.
I don't know anything about like constructing, designing trails, blah, 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 blah. But I said, I'm really willing. I work good with government officials like the BLM and, state forestry and Army Corps of Engineers. I know how to deal with, because I've been in government all my life, as a servant. And so I know how to talk to people, but I said, I don't know how to do this. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not computer literate. So, you know, I got to learn a lot, and they unanimously hired me. So, um, that's my way of contributing to that community. And then, I try to be available for family and for friends or people that I can help that are in need. And, that's my goal, is to be connected in that way. And then I also enjoy being able to have connections like you. Like, I know if I went to visit my brother-in-law in Dallas, I could, if I wanted to take time to go to San Antonio and go for a mountain bike ride, I'd be willing to bet that you'd hook me up,
Heck yeah,
so
dude.
yeah. If I wanted to go to France, and if I was in France, I'm sure if I contacted Steven, he'd probably hook me and my wife up, so it's good to have those connections.
Yeah. And I'm interested in like what book that is. And to go back to the translator thing, there's a book, oh not a book, a movie that came out with Guy Ritchie. I mean, it's like Hollywood-ish, but it's about like the
Yeah,
relationship between the
yeah, yeah.
translator and
That's a good movie. I
yeah,
liked it.
I saw
Yeah.
it. We
I
saw it
can't,
recently.
yeah, I can't remember what it was called, but I've seen it twice. Yeah, the book is called Notes from Afghanistan, and you could get it on Amazon. Um, it's good. It's really good. It's super cheap. It might even be free if you're Amazon Prime. I had the ebook version on my Kindle, but yeah, it's like it's just mundane stuff. There's no hero stuff. There's no combat, but
Right.
like it's a trip, because like he had this idea that he could make a positive change by teaching people English, but their own cultural struggles within their Afghan community were making it almost impossible to teach them English. I mean, and to read him trying to figure that out, like, how can I get through to these guys? Um, because they're all from different, what do you call it?
Tribes.
Different sects, yeah, of Afghanistan, and different, almost like a caste system. Like, oh, you don't speak Pashtun, so I'm not talking to you, or you're not from this village, I'm not talking to you. They were just making it really hard.
Yeah.
So, but anyhow, it's a good book. Yeah, Notes from Afghanistan. So, uh, yeah.
I want to say I've heard of that book before. I don't know if you mentioned it before, but
Maybe I might have. I told him before. I said, yeah, I always pump it to my friends. I think but I said that nobody ever listens to me because I'm old. So
nah, I mean, I'm interested in read it. It'd be cool to interview him too.
oh,
But
he'd probably be down for that. I
yeah,
know he's a busy dude, but he'd probably be down for that. Yeah, his name's Steven Specht. S
Steven
P
Speck.
E Specht.
I
Yeah,
definitely want. I
he's on
definitely,
Facebook
I
every
definitely want to
day.
read his book first before reaching out to him.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, and it's going back to like affecting your circle. I mean, that's really what I learned. I learned that the hard way, right? Like I even starting this podcast or just starting like self work or all these things. At first, I was trying to take all this information and like help people I love and family and friends.
Right.
And then I realized that not everybody wants to be like some people are okay where they're at, and that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
But it's also like recognizing like one, like, or who are you, like talking to myself, who are you to try to help anyone, right?
Right.
And then secondly, it's also like I learned to just not try to change people and just change myself. And that sounds
Yeah.
it's cliche, right? If you want to change the world, change yourself or whatever.
Right, but that right there is throughout all different philosophies of thought about
Mm,
working on yourself, including the Bible,
right,
so I mean, and other world religions. I mean, yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong by trying to improve yourself.
right. And so that right there, once I kind of accepted that, and I still have to reel myself in sometimes because I want to like help people, but I try to reel that in and just be try to be that presence, right? And not by trying to be it, but just be it. And then people will come to you, and if they want help, and if they don't, they don't. And that's
Yeah,
fine. And
yeah,
it creates less stress on me.
yeah, and I spent a lot of time in Al-Anon after I divorced my first wife. Al-Anon is a support group for friends and family of alcoholics, and one of the one of their sayings is attraction rather than promotion. And I'll never forget that because it's so true. Like you just said, attract people to you rather than promoting yourself or trying to push something, you know. And we were just talking about self-improvement. Well, what better way to attract people than to improve your own life, to people to say, wow, like I like being around that person, that, they're healthy, they're, they blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, people will want to come to you, want to come to your podcast, read your book, do whatever, if you are healthy and balanced, and are working on yourself, you're trying to make your community a better community, or you're starting from yourself to your family to you know whatever groups you're associated with. And one of the things you just said, before it escapes me, about about working on yourself and why me. One of the things in Marcus Aurelius says is, why not you? Like especially regarding a tragedy, like some people feel like, something happened, they got in a car wreck. That's a big one here, because car wrecks mean, you know expense and stress and hassle and insurance companies. People are like, oh, why me? Why not you?
Right.
I mean, you're not special. And I think if you can approach things like that with I'm not special. Yeah, this broke and it's really expensive. Well, oh well, somebody else's shit broke too. I
Right.
mean, like, why not you? So everybody knows somebody, with cancer, and people handle it different ways. But when it falls on you, why not you? You're not special.
Right.
Look at all the suffering right now. I mean, all over the world. It's like, all I can say is, why not me? And I've journaled a lot about that, because there was a time when I would just like, that could really mess up my day, my week, my year, is like self-pity about, like, this is not fair. But of course it's fair. We're all, let's see,
Yeah. And there's two ways to look at that, because it's funny. I laugh because last night we were having a meeting for that class we just finished. They have like continuous learning and stuff, and
Mhm.
we were talking about starting like our own businesses and entrepreneurship and what have you.
Sure.
And I cited a movie that it's called with Eddie Murphy on Netflix, Dolomite.
Yes.
And I think it's a hilarious movie, and it's probably not for everyone. But what I really appreciated about that movie, and the reason I brought it up last night, was because that's one of the reasons I kind of started this podcast. It wasn't like but it was how that individual, that director, continually found ways to do it, and he was just kind of like, why not me, right?
Yeah.
So to go back to why not me, yes, it works both sides, right? It could be
Yep.
like, why not me? Like, yeah, I'm not special. But on
Right.
the other side of that, I feel like not special in the way of, I feel each person, if they can find their purpose, they're special in their own way to help others, like be that light. And
Right.
and so they're special in that way, but I understand where you're coming from also, where it's like not so special where you feel like you are immune to suffering.
Right. Right.
So there's definitely going back to balance, right? And stoicism, right? It's like
Yep.
understanding that balance of both sides, right? Not
Yep.
getting too high when things are going really good, and not getting too low when things are going really bad. It's
Right.
the next day that can change on a dime.
Right. Yep. It's super true. Super true. I'm looking
But
for something while I'm talking to you here. Looking
yeah.
for a quote about that, but I don't know if I'll be able to find it or not.
um yeah, and to go back while you're looking for that, to go back to like in getting involved in your community and trail building, that's something I want to do. I need to find more time, and I do that when I'm able to. However, um that's one of the things I want to do. And it's kind of tough here in Texas because we don't have sanctioned trails. And the city and the local nonprofits are looking to change that. They're bringing in like trail builders from like art or nation, well, world. I don't want to say world, but they do like IMBA trails.
Yeah.
They're going to build one here in San Antonio, and they're
Mhm.
trying to bring that online and take the Bentonville approach in the way of um, because San Antonio is a tourist city. That's the industry.
Yeah.
And if they could bring trail systems here, then they can bring more money to the city. And unfortunately, that's the way the world works, right? Like,
Yep.
you have to make it right for whoever's investing to have a
Right.
return on their investment through
Right.
tourism, etc.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a slow going process. But in the meantime, it's difficult to try to build trails when so many people have access to them and change them up. But
Yeah.
I'm glad you are taking point and kind of leading by example and affecting your community in that way. And I know you're going to cut a tree here in a minute to move
Yeah,
on.
but the thing of that is though, like you just said, you really want to get involved in it. I've always wanted to get involved in it, but I had to be realistic.
Right.
Like I have time now. I didn't have time then,
Mhm.
and I always told myself when I retire, because work in the fire department, you work in 24-hour shift, and you work 56 hours a week without overtime. I always worked overtime, so I was working about 80 hours a week, and sometimes more. But so then that meant the weekend. So if I had a weekend off, I couldn't go do trail work. I'd never be able to ride. So
Right.
I would join the local trail clubs and let my contribution be me joining and paying money.
Mm,
And I always said when I retire, I'm going to do trail work. So as soon as I retired, I started doing trail work, and then this came up, and I really didn't want to do it. It's a 2-year commitment, and but I thought, why not? I mean, I'll do the best job I can. You know, um,
definitely.
yeah. And, we work with BLM. I'm sure you guys must have BLM land in Texas.
What
That's
is
federal. Bureau
BLM?
Bureau of Land Management. It's
Okay, okay.
public lands.
Got you.
And so that's how we started is we got this club, have this area which was, public land, BLM land, and then went through BLM to be able to build a trail on this land. We had to submit trail reviews in this long process. But once it started, and it started before I got involved, obviously, but once it started, then they developed this relationship with BLM, and now these trails are super popular trails.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah,
I don't
and
know if
so
they have that here because I mean they may, but a lot of Texas is privatized land and there's hardly any public land. If they are, it's like a state park or a
yeah.
national park.
Well, we have trails in state parks too, and we also have some trails in 2 city parks. And we work with the cities. Everything's above board on. We have a meeting coming up on the 10th with the city of Springfield. We want to do. We have a really nice blue and green trail built in this park, um, and we want to put a what we call a dark blue trail. It's blue trail with introduction to black jump line, and the city wants a beginner trail and an ADA access trail next to the parking lot, and that's their priority. And so we're having a meeting with them, and they want assurances that if we build this blue trail, this dark blue trail, that we're going to help them build the beginner trail too.
Mm.
And so, I mean, if you have a trail club, you start with the city of San Antonio, and if they have an area where you'd like to build a pump track and some skills areas, I mean, you start somewhere like that. Um,
Yeah, they brought in Velo Solutions, came in and built 2 pump
yeah.
tracks here, and then
Oh,
they
nice.
just built another one, which is a longer one,
Mm-hmm.
that is right next to the other pump track. So
And,
it's definitely moving. It's just, I mean, as you know, with any bureaucracy, it's slow moving.
right.
It's not as quick as we want. But I mean, there's the gnarly kind of loose limestone riding has made some really good riders here because it's
Ah,
especially when we go to somewhere with grip. It's like
yep.
I remember when I went to Oregon and I rode the trails there. I was Ashland, and people were like, "Man, these trails are so blown out and stuff." And I was like, "Dude, what are you talking about? These are amazing. Like compared,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Right.
Perspective
Yep.
is everything." But Yeah, I was like, man, there's so much grip here, and I was like, they're like, it's super loose, it's so dry. I mean, relative to them, right? I was like, I get it, but I was like, you should go right where we're at, man. Like, you're lucky you have your fillings left, and like it's so like chunky in some spots,
Right.
but it
Yeah,
makes you a
your
good rider.
videos. Yeah, your videos. It looks chunky. It looks like if you make a mistake, you're going to pay for it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And
Yep.
but it also teaches you how to like, and that's one thing I really try to get good at is riding over chunk, like flowing over chunk, and just trying to
Yes.
learn how
Yeah.
to, yeah, and
Yeah. I know it when I see it. You
oh
see videos and you're like, wow, that guy's just floating over that. I can't pull it off myself, but I know it when I see it.
yeah. But maybe one day, man, you can come down here, and I still need to make my way up there. It's just it's quite the hike. Whether I fly in or I need to get a bike bag. That's probably the most ideal way. Because
Well,
drive.
we have high quality rentals here.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah, we have
Um,
pivots and for rentals at our local shop and have really high quality rentals.
yeah, I just need to take my pedals. Um,
Yep.
but yeah, man. I know you got to build a trail. Did you find that quote?
I didn't. I found some other quotes, but not that one. That
Okay.
was the one I was looking for.
What do you got?
So I got one right here. Let's see if I can. So this is in notebook 2. So meditations is comprised of 10 notebooks. And they put them together. They tried to make the notebooks are daily journals, and so they don't follow any kind of theme or order. And so when they started doing meditations, they tried to group them into categories that make sense. And this is meditations notebook 2, verse or chapter or whatever, paragraph 11, and it's everything you do and say and think should be predicated on the possibility of your imminent departure from life. But if God exists, leaving this world can't be something to fear because they wouldn't let anything bad happen to you. On the other hand, if they don't exist or have no care for the human race, why live in such a world devoid of God's and divine providence? But in fact, they do exist and they do care for the human race, and they've made it entirely up to each of us to avoid experiencing anything truly bad. And if anything else were bad, they would have also made sure they would have also made sure that it was our choice whether or not to experience that too. But how could a man's life be made worse by anything that doesn't make him a worse person? The universe would have neglected this only if it were ignorant, or if it had knowledge but lacked the ability to guard against it or to correct it. But neither of these is the case, nor could it have committed to such a great wrong out of the importance or incompetence as to let good and bad things be the lot equally of good and bad people without distinction. But death and life, glory and obscurity, pain and pleasure, wealth and poverty, all these things come to good and bad people alike, since they are morally neutral in themselves, and this proves that they're neither good nor bad. So, basically saying, if God exists, um, then why are you afraid to leave this world? Because God's going to take care of you. If God doesn't exist, then why would you care? Why not leave this world? What are you afraid of? And then he talks about how we've talked about that. Why not me? And that speaks to that. But death and life, glory and obscurity, pain and pleasure, wealth and poverty, all these things come to good and bad people alike. Like, yeah, why not you? Um,
Yeah,
and so and then it also that also goes when he says since they are morally neutral in themselves, and this proves that they're neither good nor bad. So that goes back to Seneca saying, the only thing that makes something good or bad is the way you think about it. Only your thinking makes something good or bad. that's a good one to roll around in your mind, because of course you and I know that some things are like evil or bad.
Right.
But why are they evil or bad? What do we think? Why do we think they're evil or bad? You know. So anyhow, I mean, that was a big text, and I'm not a real smooth reader, but
No, you're good, man. I mean, that's
so
definitely a lot to think about.
yeah,
There's a guy that I've listened to, and I'm reading one of his books now. I like you. I have a bunch of different books that I work on all at once.
yeah,
It takes me forever to get through like a series of books, but I like doing that because some of the books contradict each other, not contradict, but they like without even understanding that this going to happen, but it challenges the other book that I'm reading, whether it's the Bible or Homo Deus, which is a really good one. It's a brief history of tomorrow. He talks about animalism and humanism and the idea of how we exist. And then there's other books that well, Stephen Meyer, that's what I was going to. Stephen Meyer, he's a scientist and he gets into intelligent design and like the DNA and like all these things, right? But to so it's like that ebb and flow, right, of God and good versus evil and stuff like that. Because the very basis that we know people, I'm pretty sure we are from our personal experiences, we could tie that like, man, that's just pure evil. Like some of the things they do.
right,
But
right,
to going back to the subjective idea of what is evil and what isn't. I mean, I think that's again subjective, but at the same time, there is like a moral. I don't know if, and this is something that I guess anybody that's listening can roll back and forth. Like, where did those morals come from, right? Where did those values come from? Was
right,
it through upbringing, or was it something intrinsically in us as we, you know, came to like as we were born, like
right,
some type of coding that was in us?
right.
But
Yeah, very, very briefly, like I believe it's intrinsic in human beings, because morality doesn't only come from religion, because
mm,
morality is in different religions all over the world, including, you know, Amazon tribes. You know, they have sense of morality, right and wrong, what you do and what you don't do, you know, and you know, in America especially, we think morality comes from Christianity, but I don't believe that's true. I think you touched on when you said, is it intrinsic? I think it is
right.
personally. Right.
So then it begs the question, like, I don't know, say it begs the question, but at least I asked the question. I've asked my question. Like, where did that? How did that? How did that coding come to be within us? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying we're going to answer that here, but it's a
Right.
question for all of us to
Right.
ask.
But even you think about it, animals have a sense of right and wrong. You know, with my horses, man, man, they were true like beings, and my dogs, you know, they're right and wrong, you know, and there's um
Hmm.
so yeah, but I definitely think, you know, us being at the top of the food chain, you know, as sentient beings, um and and I don't have the answer either of how is it coded into us. I just know that it's there, and I just know that I don't believe it comes from religion. Maybe someday we'll find out. I don't know.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think religion is something that we as humans, uh, it's kind of like the tribal thing, right? But if there is intelligent design, a creator, and whatever that creator is, it's not tied to one religion or another. It's like
no, it can't be.
supersedes that.
Yeah, it can't be. I like that. I like the thought of the logos of the universe, you know, and everything being connected. And I definitely don't have the answers. I mean, I used to think the answer was Christianity, and I walked away from
Huh.
that. Um, and uh, and I don't have the answers. Maybe I mean, with all these the new telescopes and everything, and what we're all are seeing all these galaxies and stuff now. I don't know. You know, I don't definitely don't have an answer. My mind is open if something comes to me, you know,
Right.
it's something I can't deny or whatever. But I think a lot of our religion, you know, and a lot of religion comes from fear of death, and 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 us not wanting this ride to be over, you know. Um, but yeah. Anyhow,
Yeah. And then there goes attachment, right? Like
right,
attachment, we don't want to let go because of what we created or what we, our
right,
family, our loved ones, etc. Right? The list goes
yep,
on.
yep.
But that's why I don't like. I think when I die, I don't want to be in a coffin. Like
Oh no,
I want,
no, I'm not.
like,
We recently did our wills, my wife and I want to be cremated and spread out somewhere. And like I'll be dead, so I won't care where they spread my ashes.
put
But
you in a new trail. That'd be cool.
yeah, yeah, new trail, old trail, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. But anyhow, I think, you know, as a good place to start is by those four cardinal virtues: courage, wisdom, justice, and temperance. Um, I think that's a good place to start. And if you are interested in those virtues, then, you know, Stoicism might work for you as something you turn to once in a while or all the time.
Yeah. And or you could do like some people do, they just kind of pull from different things and
Yep.
try to
Sure. Sure. Yep.
um but Mike, man, I always enjoy having conversations with you. And there's a lot of stuff we could have pulled out, but I know we're kind of pressed for time. Especially when you brought up like telescopes and like some of the things that are kind of going on in the world, like that technology is kind of revealing and what have you, even like to
Uh-huh.
include like I think one of the ones I heard about CRISPR finding a, a coding in our DNA that you can turn like or that our need to worship is like you could turn it off and on, but it's always active for like in our DNA structure.
Hmm.
I'm probably jacking that up, but it's
Yeah.
something along the lines. So it's another question. It's just like, whoa, man,
Sure.
like we don't know what we don't know, you know.
Right.
But I hope you enjoy cutting up that tree. I
Yeah.
enjoy trail building and cutting trees.
Yeah.
Today actually is our latest video that I finished for the dirt therapy project. We went did an angel fire.
Okay.
We did South Boundary. It's on the Dirt Therapy Project YouTube channel. But we ended up having to cut a tree or move a tree out of, off the trail, and that's always a good time.
Yeah.
But
Well, if you ever make it back to Oregon, we have a guest trailer on the side of the house over here, you know, big enough for two people.
heck
And
yeah,
so yeah, you guys make a long drive or make a short flight
yeah,
and we'll go mountain biking.
yeah, man. Can I bring my pup? That's the big question.
Oh, of course. Yeah,
She's friendly.
yeah. Yeah,
Um,
my dogs are going with me today. They're trail dogs.
nice. Lotus is a trail dog, which is kind of more like a hunting dog. Like she wants to go smell and stuff, but she'll
Yeah.
maybe she'll get some good habits from your pups.
Yeah, well, I spent a lot of money training my dogs to be off leash, and so they're really good, have really good recall. And
Okay.
just leave, you know, Jax, leave it. Jax,
Yeah.
come, and that's it. And it works every time.
Yeah, that's the way Lotus is too. She listens 9 times out of 10. Um, but I appreciate you, man. I hope we have a great
Appreciate you
day.
too.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
like hit me up whenever, man. Send me whatever information. But everyone, thanks for listening to the podcast. Thanks for being
Yep.
patient. I try to get these out as often as I can. Have these deeper conversations and things that I'm truly curious and interested in. I hope this helps you. Like I said, if you want to listen to Mike's story, episode 55 of the podcast, you can find on Spotify, Pandora, wherever you stream podcasts, also on YouTube. This one should be out as soon as I can push it out, and then I'm going to continue to have other people on. Thank you for your patience and time, and y'all have a good one.
All right. Thanks, brother.
Yes, sir, man. Have a good
Bye.
one. All right, man. Out.